Welcome to episode 15 of the Everyday Expertise podcast. I'm your host, Roland Martin, and I hope that today's conversation will expand your knowledge. For today's conversation, I've done something a little bit different than a typical episode in that I brought back a guest that I've had on before, and that's my brother, Ricky Martin. Instead of just sticking to one topic like I typically do with a guest, we talk about a few different things, including how this podcast has been going so far and what our impressions and thoughts on it are up to this point. We also answer some audience questions, so thank you for those of you that submitted questions that we talk about. And then towards the end, we take a few minutes to answer a series of questions that our mom submitted to us. And they're questions about our past that we just answer spontaneously. And we had a lot of fun doing that. So, yeah, we really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you do as well. Welcome back, Ricky, to Everyday Expertise. I'm excited about rehashing some of the podcast a little bit with you and then answering some questions. So it's really good to have you here.
All right. Thank you. It's good to be back. And yeah, congratulations on, I guess this will be the 15th podcast episode. So 15 successful episodes, if this one is.
Yeah, thank you. And I also have to say that, and I'm going to mention this a little bit later too, but it's been really great having you as a partner and someone to take on some of the load, especially with the promotional side of things, but also to discuss things and get that ready feedback on a regular basis. And it's just been really helpful. And I don't know if I can say that I wouldn't have successfully done 15 episodes without your help, but it wouldn't be the same, and I'm really thankful for it. So thanks a lot. So to get started, I thought we would, since it's been a few months since we did our first recording, I was curious if there's been any significant events that have happened to you since the last time that I had you on.
So there's not a whole lot of new things. These pop filters are new, so there's that. Probably the biggest thing is we moved. So last time we recorded, Jasmine and I were still living in Toronto, and middle of July we moved back to this area, to Waterloo. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work involved in both packing our things up and then settling into the new place. So now we're in our place in Waterloo. It's really right by Waterloo Park. So it's a really nice location, close to uptown and everything, and also a lot closer to a lot of friends and family. So we've gotten to, the two of us have spent a little bit more time together this summer, I think, than we would have otherwise. Yeah,
it's been really nice having you guys so close, and doing things like running together has on a regular basis has been a lot of fun. That we've been so close just for doing things like connecting for a weeknight recording like this, and or just getting together for an hour or two here or there, which wasn't really possible when you were living an hour's drive away. So it's just been really nice.
Yeah. How about you? What's new with you?
A few things have changed or kind of been ongoing over the last few months. And the big one is that a few weeks ago, got back into school full time again, except fully online this time. So that was a bit of a learning curve at the beginning, and just it felt really busy and overwhelming the first week or two. And I think that part of that, it felt more that way than just a normal semester starting. And I think the biggest reason for that was because there wasn't that regular schedule of classes to go to, and I think it just took some getting used to what my schedule is going to be, how I'm going to be on top of assignments and that kind of thing. Plus, at the same time, there's still a couple days a week where I'm taking care of Seth regularly, so I don't get a lot of studying done on those days while Joy works. And so it's been a little bit of juggling, but I feel like things have been coming together a little bit better now. So that's going a little smoother.
I saw something interesting on social media today. I forget if it was Twitter or Reddit, but about education now being almost all virtually.
Yeah.
And it was something about how education used to be about learning, but now it's about proving to your teacher that you're learning or something like that. Do you agree with that, or have you found that to be the case at all?
I wouldn't have said that it wasn't that before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because in order to pass a class, you have to prove that you learn the material or are able to do the material. So I don't know if the post would have been referring to that there's more accountability in some ways, or that accountability looks a little different maybe. Do you know what?
Yeah. No, I maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm quoting that exactly right.
Yeah. So
either.
It's definitely different, and just already in the few weeks, I see that some of my professors are very organized and are doing the online thing well, and are really on top of things, and some aren't quite as organized, and things feel a little more all over the place. There are advantages to both, though. So the one that's really organized, if you don't fill out everything correctly on the first page of a test or assignment, you get a 0 on the assignment. If you hand it in a minute late, you get a 0 on that assignment.
Do you know this by experience? Like,
No. He just I've done it. It's kept me on my toes to make sure I have everything in on time. But he always sends out an email saying something like 20 of you did not do this in time, and so you got a 0. Or like, he keeps us well informed. And then there's another class that the lectures and the PowerPoints are a little more all over the place, and it's not well laid out, the schedule for the year, like when assignments are due and that kind of thing. And so that feels a lot less organized. But then when our last assignment was due a couple days ago, suddenly about 2 hours before the deadline, she just sent us an email saying, you know what, I see that a bunch of you haven't got it in yet, so I'm going to just give you all one more day to get this assignment in. So I don't see my other professor doing that at all. So there's good things about both, I guess.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the last couple months, I've been back to my tutoring job at Mathnasium, so it's a couple days a week, and it's a little different with COVID. We wear masks, and there's fewer students in the center at one time, but like most things, you just kind of get used to it, and we've settled into it pretty well, I think, so it's been fun to do that again. And other than that, I don't know if I've talked about it on here at all, and I didn't talk about it a whole lot, period. But a couple months ago, we had a really good time traveling out to the West Coast, flew into Vancouver, and then spent a few days on Vancouver Island. So it was Joy and Seth and I, and then we met up with you and Jasmine out there for about a week. And that was just a really good time to get away, and I was glad we were able to do the trip. We weren't sure for a while. Actually, the trip was originally planned as a reunion with my mom's family out in Oregon, but we weren't able to cross the border then because of COVID. So we weren't sure if the trip was going to go, but we went ahead with flying out to BC instead. So I was really glad we were able to do that. It was a good vacation and a good chance to see a different part of the country.
Yeah, we really enjoyed that too, and like you said, both as a vacation, a getaway, some just kind of a break, some time off, but it was really nice to spend some time with you guys as well, and really enjoyed that aspect of it too.
Yeah, it was a nice little start to you guys moving to Waterloo then, because you'd moved just a couple days before you left on the trip, right?
Yeah. That's right.
All right, very good. So what I kind of had in mind for the first few minutes of the podcast here is that we get a little meta with it, meaning that I thought it'd be fun to just talk with you a little bit about our general impressions of how it's been going, some of the things that we've learned, or some of the things that we've taken away from from the first few months of putting on a podcast. And then we'll have a few questions from audience members a little bit later on that are kind of along the same lines as well. So just in general, how would you describe, or what have been some of your general impressions of starting a podcast, helping me start a podcast project like this, and now a few months into it?
Yeah, well, maybe to start, I should say what my involvement has been.
Yeah.
So we maybe talked a little bit about this last time around, but when you originally presented the idea to me about starting a podcast, you had some questions about if I thought that was a good idea. Mm-hmm. And I did. I was very supportive.
Oh yeah, you were right on board right away within a minute or two of me saying it.
Yeah, and I thought the idea or having conversations with everyday people about mm-hmm. their area of expertise, I liked that. And as we talked about this a little more, it might have been the next time, you had some more questions about maybe like what I would do in this situation. Like you asked me, would it be smart to have a website for something like this, or would I need a website? And I kind of got to thinking that I could use some of my skills in marketing and graphic design mm-hmm. And help you. So we basically decided to partner. I guess we strategized a little bit about what the podcast was going to look like, but a lot of my role was the marketing. So a logo and mm-hmm. some of the graphics, the website, like our presence on social media. I've been helping with that.
Right, yeah. You run the Instagram account and set up the YouTube and is there anything else you do with that?
The image, other than creating the images.
Yeah, right. No, I meant as far as running social media. Yeah. No, that's been great.
So far I've really enjoyed doing that. And one of the things as well is the two of us together share the Anchor account, I guess. So we look at the analytics together, and it's been fun to look at the numbers as they come in and kind of discuss. I always got cared way too much about the numbers when I was creating YouTube videos more regularly, and I would every day be checking how many people watched at this time. I obsessed about it too much, but there's something I really enjoy about that at the same time. So it's been really fun to have someone else to look at them with.
And to discuss together. Trends or that kind of thing. And please, no one get the idea that there are massive amounts of people that are tuning into the podcast on a weekly basis or anything. It's very small. But it has been fun to see a little bit of growth over the last few months that we've been doing it. And so that's not the only thing that I'm going for or anything necessarily, but it is fun to see those numbers climb a little bit. If you look back at the trends, there's a little bit of growth there. So that's been exciting. And right. Just along with that, I wouldn't like to go back and do it without your help on the promotional and graphic design side of things. But I doubt that we would have the same, or I think the small numbers of listeners that we have would be a lot smaller if it wouldn't be for the amazing professional looking graphics that you put out on a weekly basis. So I think that's just been great that you're able to do that and been willing to do that and have put the time and energy into it. And it's so much fun for me even to be able to share those and put those out. And I haven't heard from a lot of people on it, but I've gotten a few comments since it's been coming out that they just look really professional and people are noticing them, even if we don't hear it all the time. So just wanted to share that with you, that I have heard that from a few people.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And yeah, I don't know that it makes a huge difference in how many listeners you have now. But I know talking about it at the beginning. For example, you weren't sure if you wanted to do Facebook, and
Right.
part of
Yeah.
that was just like you have enough work as it is with recording and doing all that, and you're
Yeah.
busy besides that, and so yeah, just having another person to help manage that
Yeah, for sure.
allowed us to do that in the first place. But yeah, I've enjoyed helping you with it, and yeah, I'm sure you've gotten more feedback from people actually talking to you, but I've seen some of the emails and messages that you've gotten on social media and such.
Hmm.
And so it's always great to see that encouragement for you. And there've been a couple messages from people that you don't necessarily know that maybe
Yeah.
had a connection to one of the guests or something, and
Hmm.
so it's always really interesting to see that connection that people might make that way.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's so neat when people are willing to take the time to write a note or to share something that they appreciated from an episode, or just take the time to say that they've been enjoying it. And yeah, there's been a few people that I don't know, or maybe know who they are, but don't know them personally, that have sent me a message, and that's been really meaningful. And I another part of that is I love hearing what other people have taken away from a certain episode. So that's been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, and I was going to say along with that too, as far as are people enjoying it. A little while ago, a month ago or so, we were hanging out with some of our cousins. We had a
Yeah.
games night. We got to talking about the podcast, and it was really interesting for me to hear because all of them sounded like they had listened to multiple episodes and were
Yeah.
really enjoying it. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought that they were podcast people. And I
Right.
guess maybe some of them admitted that they aren't or they weren't until this podcast came along. So hearing that from them, that how much they're enjoying it, and we were talking about some specifics in episodes and
Yeah.
stuff. That was really really fun for me to hear, and I'm sure it was for you as well.
Yeah, no, that was a fun conversation, and it has sparked conversations with, like, in person with friends and family over the last few months. Like, it can be a starting point for a conversation, and people say something about a certain episode, and that will lead into a conversation then for a few minutes, and so that part of it's been really fun. And I've enjoyed multiple parts of doing this project, but that's been one of the most fun, is connecting with the listeners, and hearing what their impressions are, and talking further about it. So yeah, that's been great. Just two pieces of feedback that I wanted to mention is actually from two old school buddies, and one of those was that I heard from a couple weeks ago was Jason Shantz, and he sent me a message, and he said that he really enjoyed hearing from episode 7, I believe it was, with my uncle Kevin Martin, and a few people also had mentioned this specific thing, and that was where Kevin shared his ideas of success and failure, and
Right.
And I think that connected with a few people, but it was really good to hear from Jason again about that. I haven't talked to him for quite a while, so that was great.
Yeah.
And then just a few days ago, Chad Bauman, who was a year behind me at Countryside, so spent a lot of school years with him, shared one of the posts about Steve's episode 13, and was just talking about how much he enjoyed that episode, and that was really neat to hear his feedback there as well. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that I've enjoyed seeing how the format has kind of solidified, and what I mean by that is the interview format that I use, and those that are paying close attention, the wonderful ones of you that have listened to every episode have probably figured out that I kind of ask similar questions or kind of follow a similar theme throughout an interview. And that's been fun. I enjoy that consistency and I enjoy hearing.
For example, what's keeping you busy currently? And then what are your hobbies?
Yeah.
And then,
have you listened to every episode? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. But also more generally, how I enjoy hearing about someone's story, how they got into it, and then we'll like to ask some questions about the specifics of their expertise. And so it's been it wasn't necessarily a plan right away, so that's kind of developed, and maybe it will change. But I like consistency, so it makes it a lot easier for me if I kind of have a plan and format to follow as well.
Yeah.
But one thing that struck me recently, and so when I came up with the name and the idea of Everyday Expertise, I was thinking of it as being everyday people sharing their expertise. Mm-hmm. And what's neat about that is that I often don't think of that necessarily as expertise. If it's not, if it's just a job that lots of people have, or maybe one that doesn't require as much training or something like that, I maybe tend to not think of it as much as expertise. And so that was my idea, that to highlight those things. Mm-hmm. But then as I was thinking about guests, it's been a lot of fun having guests on that have a very specific area of expertise that's different than a lot of people. And so we maybe think of that person that they've done a lot of time and energy into their training and development, and are doing something that not many people are doing. But what I thought of is that everyday expertise works really well for that also, because it highlights how someone with expertise in an area that a lot of people don't have is just an everyday person as well. So it kind of flips it, and it can work both ways. And so that's kind of, I think, what I've been doing. But I just had that thought a little while ago, and I thought that's kind of a neat way where it can be taken both ways, everyday expertise.
So you came to the realization that you named your podcast perfectly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done. One other thing I wanted to say that I forgot to mention was concerning my role with helping you in the podcast is that we should really mention our photographer as well.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Mom has been taking pictures of all the guests. And yeah, she's done a really great job with that.
So you have good quality images to work with?
Yeah, and they're they're basically similar in, how they're standing and lighting and stuff like that, from the big window. So so that helps to have a nice consistent look for each one of the guests. Which I really like. I don't know how much other people notice it, but
no, and that's I think that just helps to make the promotional images that much better. So that's great. Did you really think about it the one time when I tried to take a picture because Mom wasn't around at the time?
I did, and yeah, I mean, you maybe didn't have enough instructions from me or whatever, but yeah, it was too far zoomed out, so by the time I got it to the image to the size that I wanted it was a little bit grainy, but
so that's what happened.
Yeah, we got Mom to do retakes, and it all worked out.
Yeah, it was nice that it worked out well for that guest to come and get a retake.
Yes.
All right, anything else that you wanted to say before we take some of the audience questions that we gathered?
No, I don't think so. I'd say let's move into the audience questions.
All right, sounds good. So the first one is from Conrad. And thank you, Conrad, for this question. And the question is, what are your top 3 cereals and why? So Ricky, what are your top 3 cereals and why? And better take them one at a time and explain why, unless they all kind of are the same reason.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, this is a great question.
It is a great question.
Something that I don't think gets discussed enough. And I've actually put some thought into this since the question came in, and think like my top cereals have really changed over my life.
So if you would have gotten this question like 10 years ago, it would be a different list than what you're going to share? Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Like I used to really go for the sugary ones, like Lucky Charms. And I still enjoy that, but for some reason it seems more like I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't seem as like wholesome or something. When it's just really really sweet and sugary. It's more like eating candy or something. But yeah, and I was gonna say now I hardly ever eat cereal. Like we don't
really
keep,
okay.
we don't really keep cereal at home. So it's not really, so it's kind of a treat every time I do. But I think my current top 3 cereals, we'll start with number 3, is Shreddies.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's definitely different than the sweet cereals I used to like. Sure. But something about the texture I really like. It's just got a good crunch to it, and it feels like it's got some substance. Like you're really eating, a real breakfast food when you eat it.
Doesn't it get kind of soggy in milk? Like, do you eat it in milk?
Yeah, but you gotta time it right. Like you can't take too long.
So it can get too soggy if you leave it too long.
But that's any cereal pretty much.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then number 2 is Golden Grams.
Okay.
I really like Golden Grams. Again, it's got something about that crunch and texture or something that I like, but it's a little sweeter, so that puts it above Shreddies. And then number 1 is Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Okay.
You may notice a pattern here. They're all rectangles and they're all crunchy, so they have that in common.
That's true.
And then Cinnamon Toast Crunch is like, it's getting pretty close to one of those sweet cereals.
Yeah, I was gonna say that they're getting kind of sweeter as you get up the list.
Yeah, so that would feel like a treat, a little less like a breakfast food. But
very good. Yeah, I enjoy 2 of those quite much that you shared, but I've never gotten into Golden Grams a whole lot, so maybe I'll have to try that one again. I approached the list a little bit, or the question a little differently, and instead of answering with my top 3 cereals, I decided to answer with my top 3 ways to eat cereal. And this is different too than when I was young, because these ways have been very much influenced by my wife. All right. The ways to eat cereal are, first of all, that it needs to be at least 2 kinds. So before
at the same time.
Yeah, before I was married, I never mixed cereals. I think Dad did it sometimes, and I would see other people do it, but I never did myself. But Joy convinced me to try it, and now I do it every time. Number 2 is I don't like the sweet kinds anymore. So, I mean, I don't mind them, but they're not my favorite. And so I would not choose Lucky Charms or Cinnamon Toast Crunch like I would have when I was younger. So now the sweetest that I'll go for is Honey Nut Cheerios. And I like Corn Flakes and Rice Krispies, so I'll mix either Corn Flakes and Honey Nut Cheerios or Rice Krispies and Corn Flakes or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the third way it needs to be is with milk and fruit. So I always have to have fruit on my cereal now. And the best are peaches or strawberries or raspberries or blueberries. Those are the best cereal fruits. So we eat a lot of cereal, and we always eat it like that, basically. Except for Sundays, then we have a little bit of a sweeter cereal on Sundays. But
yeah, I agree. It's a lot better with fresh fruit, and some of those, or like something like Shreddies or Life, I think is a lot better with fruit. Like the fruit really enhances a cereal that's less sweet on its own, I think.
Right. And it's actually better with a cereal like that than with a sweet cereal, right? If you mix
exactly.
fruit with Lucky Charms or something, that wouldn't really work. So yeah, to get fruit in, then I like the not quite as sweet kind. So I kind of adapted the question then a little bit, and I'm going to throw this at you yet, Ricky. Do you have a favorite cereal box design, or is there anything that stands out to you when you eat cereal in the morning and stare at the box?
Well, like I said, we don't eat it that much, so I don't know if I stare at them in the morning enough to really know. I will say, and this almost could have probably made the top 3, is mini wheats.
Oh yeah.
I really enjoy that cereal, and I like the box design too. The little mini wheat guy is pretty cute, pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there was, do you remember ever hearing that commercial? I think maybe played on the radio a while back. It was a song.
Yeah,
about mini wheats.
That rings a bell. Yeah.
I think that's the only like advertisement I can think of that for cereal.
For any cereal. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Catchy song.
Very good, and catchy little cartoon characters as well.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So thank you, Conrad, for that question. All right, question 2, and this one is aimed at you, Ricky, and from Wendy. So, Ricky, were you interested in graphic design in high school?
That's a good question. I think I was. I think I wouldn't have necessarily known what graphic design was exactly, or that it would have been an option for a career. So it wasn't like in high school I was like, I want to be a graphic designer and that's what I want to do. But at the same time, I think I enjoyed aspects of graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really enjoyed drawing all through grade school and into high school as well. And I think it was probably in grade 9 or 10, we learned a bit of software that was somewhat related to graphic design.
Okay.
Do you remember the Serif software? Did you guys do that at all?
I might have used it like as part of the yearbook project when I did that. I don't remember if we used that or not, but I never did it like as a class or anything like that.
Okay.
But I know other students were when I was teaching there.
Yeah, I think we did have a class on it. It might have been like preparing us for the yearbook at the end of the year.
Okay.
But I remember one project was a calendar. We had to make, I think, 6 months of a calendar.
Okay, I remember. Yeah, we had to do that project as well.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was at school.
I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
And yeah, just like figuring out how to try to put images together and make graphics. Like it was terribly designed.
Okay.
if I look at it now, but I had a lot of fun doing it, as well as working on the yearbook for school. So yeah, I think there were parts that I definitely enjoyed, but like I said, it wasn't necessarily a career I was interested in.
You weren't necessarily choosing classes or things like that were going to get you into graphic design when you were in high school.
No, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that was in grade 9 or 10, and it was mandatory.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, and then in grade 11 and 12, when we could take electives and choose some of that, I did do one. They let me do a movie making or film type of elective, where somehow I got a textbook and I think like a DVD or something that had lessons on it. So I kind of on my own worked through that. So again, not really related to graphic design, but that was maybe the closest thing that I chose.
Nice, yeah. If you were asked by a high school student or one getting ready to go into high school, and you were asked if there are specific things that a high school student should be doing now to prepare for a career in graphic design, would you have an answer for them?
I think, first of all, or one thing would be learning learning software and just getting practice with, Photoshop or Illustrator. Those are the Adobe ones. I think
Yeah.
there are alternatives as well. So that would be one thing. And the other thing would be to just like really try to start paying attention to design that's all around,
Right,
like
yeah.
logos, and you pick up a book, like what does the book cover look like, what
Okay,
do
yeah.
you like about it, what you don't, what's easy to read, what's unique. Just I guess try to really start paying attention to
Nice.
what's designed around you.
Yeah, I was just I listened to our episode that we did there for episode 1 of the podcast, and I like the idea that you gave there to like find a design that you like, whether it's an album cover or a poster or a book cover or something like that, and then try to recreate it with the software. I thought that's a great idea to bring together that noticing what's around you and then practicing as well. So I thought that
Yeah.
was a great suggestion for people that wanna practice or want to get better at graphic design.
Yeah, and something I find really fun even now if I have the time is finding a tutorial on YouTube for, I don't know, making cool letters in Photoshop or something.
Okay.
Or now it's
Yeah.
probably more an animation in After Effects.
Okay.
But and you like follow it step by step. I love step by step instructions. But at the same time you're learning new things, because you're like, oh, I didn't know that you can apply a blur to a drop shadow like that, or I didn't know you could do this or whatever. So that's something that, or a good way to learn the software is just to follow tutorials like that, because
Yeah.
for me anyway, it's really fun and you're learning lots at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for those things. And thank you, Wendy, for the question. All right, next question is also for you, Ricky. And this is from Trevor. What is your favorite Pantone of the year? So start, please, by telling me what a Pantone is. Was I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A Pantone is a color. And I think it's like a brand or a company, but it's
Did they
in-
start this
I believe
whole
so.
thing?
I don't know when, but I think they've been around for a while. But there's the Pantone matching system, and there's a specific number for a whole bunch of different colors. I think it's like for print, for when you're printing, and so it's supposed to be like or you get that like pure color. So yeah, I don't know all the details, but one thing, for example, is when let's say you're printing a whole bunch of packaging for Eggos, like the waffles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think their logo is red, and that would probably be a specific Pantone. I don't know that for sure, but I'm guessing.
Okay. Yeah.
So when they print a whole bunch of those boxes at once, they have this huge printer that will have CMYK, so cyan, magenta, yellow, and black.
Okay. Yeah.
But so a Pantone color would be like its own separate ink, because all the other colors would be a mixture of CMYK,
Right.
the different inks together. But a Pantone color would be like that pure color. That's one place where it's used, like brands, to make sure that they're like the Coca-Cola red is always the exact shade of red,
No matter where it's printed around the world, kind of thing.
So it probably goes beyond that. So there's I think they pick a color each year. I
Like this
looked it up,
company does, or
yeah. I saw that link you sent, and this 2020's color is classic blue. And last year's color, 2019, was, I think it was called Living Coral,
Okay.
and that's my favorite.
Nice. Is it kind of a marketing thing that they pick this Pantone of the year, or?
I'm guessing.
Okay.
The only place I'd heard of it before is there's this website, again, Adobe, not a sponsor, but where you can pick color palettes.
Okay.
So you can like take an image and it'll, pick different points on the image and make a color palette for you. And there's just a huge library of color palettes. So like 5 color swatches that people have used together.
Okay.
And I know on that website they've promoted their Pantone of the year. That's where I saw the living coral.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. All right. So you said living coral is your favorite Pantone of the year.
Yeah. Also,
go Trevor.
He added right after that it was sort of a joke.
Right. Yeah.
So we may have just like I don't know, wasted the last 3 minutes there. But yeah, anyway, there you go.
I don't know what the joke, like if what exactly the joke is, but I did, when I was looking it up, it seemed like it was almost in some ways like where I read an article on this was like published at the end of 2019 on what the Pantone of the year is for 2020, the classic blue or whatever it was, and it seemed like they were approaching it almost like a horoscope or something, like this is going to be a classic blue year, and so here are the things you want to wear and the things you want to do. I don't know if they had COVID-19 in mind when they picked that classic blue for this year.
So maybe the joke was like nobody actually cares about this.
I'm guessing. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Thanks for answering it.
So then the next question is to you, Roland. And what was the most intimidating thing about starting a podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there were definitely a few things. And for any project that I do, I definitely face some self-doubt. And so for starting this, I would say that was a big one. I would come up with an idea, and then a day later, a few hours later, I'd be like, oh, is this really a good idea? Would anyone listen? Do I really want to put myself out there like this with a podcast? But thankfully, when I got the idea to start a podcast, I was watching a series of videos that I found on YouTube. And one of the first things that they warned about was, I believe they called it the Imposter Syndrome, that it's easy for people to get when they start a new project. And that's kind of the idea that, and it goes with self-doubt, but why can I really put myself into a platform like this where I've never been before? And it's easy to get those thoughts that I don't belong. I'm not a podcaster. I don't belong in this place.
I think a lot of people share that same imposter syndrome or whatever. And it's so easy to think like there are so many people who could do a better job at this than who already are. Like,
exactly.
Why would people choose to listen to this or whatever?
Yeah. And just hearing that it's a thing, naming it and being aware of it so early on really helped me to be okay with those thoughts and even coming to the point where I'm not doing it just to get people to listen, but I'm doing it for myself as a learning opportunity and a way to grow and hopefully a way to bring conversations with people to anyone that wants to listen. And that's been a really great thing. Another thing that was quite intimidating is the whole tech side of it, the audio part, which definitely not my favorite part of it. I did it because I wanted to do a podcast, so I learned a little bit about audio and looked up equipment and things like that. And it quickly becomes overwhelming because there's so many options, so much different types of equipment that you can get. And there's thousands of types of microphones, from the microphone on your phone, which you already have, to $5,000 microphones that you can get. And there's different types of microphones, and then you need different types of equipment to go with it, depending on the types of microphone. And so it's really overwhelming, or at least felt that way to me, and especially since it's not something that I really enjoyed. It wasn't the reason I was podcasting. But it finally just made a decision and went with it. And learned how to use it. And thankfully, the good news is that it really wasn't that bad. And so maybe what I'll say with that is that podcasting is something that is really accessible. And so it's a little bit of learning if you're not familiar with recording equipment. But the other thing that's really nice about it, and that's changed in the last few years, is it's really easy to get your podcast out there.
Right.
So I'm using Anchor, and there's other hosts as well that make it really easy. You just upload it, follow their instructions, and within an hour or two, you can have a working podcast. And with a few days, this one was spread out to the different podcast players that everyone uses. So that was really nice that that's so easy now. And it wasn't from some of the books I was reading, it wasn't that way even just a few years ago that it's that accessible for everyone. Yeah. So yeah, if there's some of you out there are thinking of starting a podcast, it's definitely possible. I think anyone can do it. Anyone with some recording device and an internet connection to get it out there. And one thing that I've decided since I've started it is the world's a better place if everyone's podcasting. So
every single person.
Yeah, because and we're having conversations and sharing ideas and things like that. And then I think if you podcast, you're probably going to listen to podcasts more too. So in that way, I think it would be better. And the third intimidating thing is I find coming up with questions for a topic that I know a little about can be intimidating. So I liked what Roseanne said on episode 8, and she was talking about students that are in their first year or just getting into a new topic. Mm-hmm. They ask questions that aren't really based in reality, and so can sound really strange or funny, and maybe can even be good questions sometimes to someone that is an expert in a certain area. So that's a fear of mine with especially topics that I'm not familiar with, is that I'll ask a question that will seem somewhat absurd to to my guest. So I worry about that a little bit, but it's gone all right so far.
Yeah. And then along with that question, or kind of contrasting, what parts of podcasting have you enjoyed the most?
Definitely the conversations that I've gotten to have with people have been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and it's been a really great time. And maybe something I'll say specifically about that is I think it's been happening all along, but I've really started to notice it in the last few episodes, is that as we get into the conversation, usually about halfway through, the guest starts to relax and kind of let loose a little bit more, and especially as they get into things that they're passionate about, you can just see that passion come out. And I've started to look for that, and it's been a lot of fun to see that with guests. So definitely one of my favorite things there. And then I mentioned the other thing as well is hearing from different people about what episode they enjoyed or what part of an episode they enjoyed. And I've been amazed how often the things that people mentioned to me that stood out to them is different than things that I took away from an episode. Yeah. So it's just fun to see that we're all different, and it's helped me to, sometimes I think that, that episode didn't go as well, and then I'll hear from someone that, they just really enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. So that's been really great to hear. It's
been just a good reminder of different, or how everyone has their own unique perspective and just comes to the table with different viewpoints, and different things stand out to them.
Yeah, for sure.
Our cousin Patrick asks, what's been one of the most interesting things you've learned through recording the episodes?
Yeah, so I took that question that said 1 and I picked 3. And I decided to go with 3 super specific things that I've learned. And so the first one is in my conversation with Dad about, from episode 3, about managing an apple orchard. And just before that, I really enjoyed that conversation. I've enjoyed the ones where I learn about a completely new topic and don't know before the conversation. I don't know much about it, but it was also really fun to talk with Dad about something that I've talked to him about many times, learned a lot about already. And there were just a few things from that conversation that I learned that were completely new, that I didn't know at all. So that was a lot of fun. And one of those was that that he said that the processes that form the buds for the next year on an apple tree actually those buds begin developing already the year before. And that was a completely new thought to me, that the buds that are going to be coming in the spring of 2021 have already been developing for a few months on the trees. And that just helped explain some things like why you need to take care of an orchard if you're having a bad year. You can't just let it go, because it's going to affect the next year. And it also explains, I knew that some types of varieties will have a really good crop one year and then often not have a good crop the next year, and they kind of have a 2-year cycle like that. And so that kind of explained that they're putting all their energy into the good crop, and then the buds need an extra year to come back. So it was fun to learn that specific thing. Another one was from episode 4 with Gabriel Yancey, and him teaching me that farm animals tend to have been prey animals, and therefore will hide weaknesses like injury or disease. And so a vet or a farmer or someone that takes care of animals has to be really aware of that they're not going to come telling you that they're injured or sick.
Yeah, I found this really interesting too, and that's actually the clip segment you used. We ended up using for that episode.
And the third one was from episode 11, I believe it was, with my cousin Logan, and learning from him that big chip companies, or at least some, will set up their own displays in the stores, or will like shelve the product themselves, display the product themselves, and that just stood out to me, and I thought was really interesting. So those were 3 super specific things that I've learned since doing this.
I'm noticing that you kind of take the questions and then like put your own twist to the answer.
Oh, is that bad?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Just
something I've noticed.
Yeah. I like doing that. Kind of surprise the person that asked the question a little bit. All right. Another question we got was, how much time per week do you spend working on the podcast? So Ricky, why don't you take that one first?
So at this point, if you notice the graphics that we put on social media and the images, there are 3 for each episode, and we have a very specific template that we follow. So it's basically just following that template and changing the image and some of the graphics. But probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours per week.
Do you have to spend a lot of time like deciding on the image to use, or like the little images that will go with a specific episode and that kind of thing? Or is that most of the time, or no?
Probably most of the time is actually doing the work of making those changes and stuff. And as far as it really depends on the episode. Like sometimes it seems like I know right away kind of what I want to use, and you like it, so we just go with it. And other times I spend more time looking for images or trying to figure out what would make the most sense. How about you? What kind of time do you put into it per week?
So my goal for when school started here at the beginning of September was that outside of recording, I'm going to try to spend 2 hours per week on it. And so that's doing things like lining up guests, preparing outlines, putting together the final episode. So I don't do any editing to the conversation. Occasionally I'll do a little bit, but I don't do much.
So is that like you're trying to keep it to 2 hours, or you're trying to put at least 2 hours in?
No, keep it to 2 hours. And then so I choose the clip that we use for the video that comes out on Monday, and choose a quote to go with the Friday posts, and a few things like that. So it's been a little more than 2 hours that I'm spending per week on it, but it's still been a lot of fun. It hasn't felt like tough work so far at this point. So it's been great and been a fun hobby to do so far.
So does a lot of time go into research, or like coming up with the questions and researching a guest, or how do you go about doing that?
I probably should spend a little bit more time on it, depending on how well I know the topic. I'll just pull questions from the top of my head and go with that. And I kind of have a template, like we talked about earlier, that it's kind of formed around. If I don't know the topic as well, or don't know the guest as well, I'll spend a little bit more time coming up with the outline. But it hasn't been too difficult for me. Like, I don't spend hours on it or anything. I can come up with the outline fairly quickly, I would say. Yeah. So, and it's fun. I enjoy seeing what questions I can come up with.
Our next question is from Joy, and she asks, where do you see this podcast in 5 years?
Yeah,
the big 5-year question.
Yeah, this is my wife's question. And so I would say that it's a hobby. And so it's something that I'm doing because it's enjoyable and I'm learning a lot from it, both from conversations with guests, and also I feel like I'm learning skills in interviewing and recording, that kind of thing. And so if I'm continuing to enjoy it, continuing to find people to interview, and people are enjoying listening to it, I could see it continuing for a long time. 5 years seems like a long time at this point, but suddenly 5 years are gone, and you look back and it went by quickly. So I don't know at this point if it'll still be going in 5 years, or if it'll look different, or if it'll be less frequent or more frequent. But at this point, it's a hobby, and so if I continue to enjoy doing it, I would continue to do it. At that point, it'd be nice if it grows, but not why I'm doing it. So if it doesn't, that's fine, and I can make a decision whether to keep doing it or not at some point.
The next question is also from Joy. When are you opening your swag shop?
Sometimes when I talk to my wife, I get the feeling that she wants me to make money from this project. And so I'm not sure if that's what she's thinking with this question or not. And that's I should probably clarify something here. And she reminded me of this after the very first episode came out, where we were talking about the origin of the idea for the podcast and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I said something along the lines of, I talked to a bunch of people and they were all very encouraging and supportive and thought I'd do a good job of doing a podcast like this. And so I found that very encouraging and wanted to do it. And she reminded me that she wasn't necessarily fully on board when I first brought the idea. And so how it happened, I think, and this is mostly my fault, but I think I sometimes I run conversations through in my head all the time. And so, like, preparing for an interview, I'm just having a imaginary conversation with the guest in my mind, and I'm
like always, you actually hear your voice talking inside your head.
Yeah. Exactly. And sometimes that happens where I plan to say something to Joy and think that I've said it, and then realize that no, that was just in my head. I didn't actually say that. I don't know if other people have that problem or not, and I don't think it happens to me all the time, but I think I had in mind that I had talked more with her about the idea than I actually had. And the other part of it was that I come up with ideas all the time, and we'll share them with her, and most of them are just ideas that will never go anywhere. And she writes them off, and that's fine. But this one kind of stuck and kept going. And I don't know. I wonder if she kind of thought that this one's going to die too, and didn't realize that in my mind it was continuing to grow and to become an idea, and I just did not communicate very well. And what happened was suddenly I was buying equipment and hadn't communicated this very well, and she's like, Roland, we got to talk about big purchases like this. I thought we had. I'm sorry. And yeah, so it was not good communication on my part. And so anyway, it was when we listened to that when she listened to that first episode, she said, Roland, was everyone on board with this podcast idea from the beginning? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of wasn't thinking about that. Sorry. So sorry about that, Joy. And the good news is that she is very much on board now, and
that's good to hear.
Yeah, and has been a faithful listener and gives me lots of ideas. And her favorite episode was the one with Cam on respiratory therapy. So
makes sense.
It's fun discussing with her too.
So maybe I missed it, but what was the answer to the question? When can the fans expect to be able to purchase merch?
Yeah, so I have no plans for any merchandise at this point, but I was going to throw the question to you. What would you suggest for everyday expertise merch? What should we, once we do open the shop, what should we have? Like a t-shirt with the two little talking bubbles, or?
I was thinking we maybe more use like the more expanded graphics like from the website. Like that could look pretty cool, like pretty big on a t-shirt, I think.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about? Like it's the two bubbles, but then it's got those other elements behind it, kind of.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe let us know if you're interested in getting an everyday expertise t-shirt.
I'm sure
we can maybe make that.
Yeah,
happen.
I'm sure Ricky can use his connections to get you one if you really want one, but no plan to advertise them at this point. All right. Thank you everyone for all those questions, and we have one more that we're going to kind of use to segue into a little bit of a different segment here, and this is from Anthony, our cousin, telling us to make sure that we tell everyone about our epic upcoming marathon. And so Ricky, you and I enjoy running a little bit, and you did 2 marathons last year, and I joined you for the second one in the fall, almost a year ago now. That was a lot of fun. There's a video on it on YouTube on Ricky's channel if anyone wants to see that. And we're planning to run one again this year, and unfortunately, we can't because of the pandemic, or can't do it in the normal way in Toronto like we would have wanted to. But they came up with this idea for a virtual marathon where people around the world can run it and input their time, and we get a T-shirt and a medal, hopefully. Anyway, and in doing this, Ricky came up with this great idea. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're planning to do?
Yeah. So. Like you said, well, okay, we had been expecting for a while that there's a really good chance that the actual marathon wasn't going to happen.
Correct. Yeah.
And so we kind of said, well, we'll keep training as if we're going to run in it, and then if it is canceled, like it probably will be, maybe we can run our own marathon. So then when we heard about the virtual, we're like, yeah,
that's true. Let's do it. I forgot we'd been talking about just doing the distance on our own, and but then decided to make it a little bit more official. So.
Yeah, so basically I got to thinking that we could plan a route that would go by a few people's places that we know in the area, and then that could be our way of having at least a few fans along the way, or people at least seeing what we're doing or cheering us on as we go by. Because one thing about running an actual marathon is, two things. One is that there are constantly people running like alongside you, with you, and there are a lot of people that come to watch people, and they do a really good job of cheering the runners on, which is it's great if you're a runner, I find. Mm-hmm. So those will be 2 things we're missing. So I guess it's a way to maybe kind of try to counter that a little bit.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll go well even without the normal support that we'd have. But at least we'll have each other. We're not just doing this on our own for it. So we're planning to do it on October 10th, Saturday morning. And so if anyone in the area wants to join us, are they welcome to do that, or is it just going to be the two of us?
Yeah. When's this going live? The 9th?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
so
you got one
tomorrow.
Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to say on the marathon?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So then for our last segment, we had one of our fans, and this is our mom, who came up with this idea, this list of questions for us. And just before we look at it, we haven't actually looked at it yet. She wondered if we'd want to just get the questions and then answer them spontaneously. It's about our past, maybe about our childhoods. I'm not exactly sure what the questions are going to be. And but before we get into them, I thought that I would just share how great it is to have a parent support in something. And so in the email that Mom sent us wondering if we'd like her to create a list of questions for us, she said she signed it as your fan. And I just thought how neat it is that that Mom's supportive of a project like this, and how great it is to have a parent support. So it was a good reminder for me as a parent to think about that, and how much of a role I have in encouraging my child.
Mm-hmm.
And a few times encouragement has come through in conversations that I've had with guests, and it's a really powerful thing, just a little word of encouragement to someone, and letting them know that they do well at something, and that can really spur someone on. So I thought that was neat. So let's do it like this.
All right.
I'll ask the first one, and then you answer the first one first, and then I'll add anything to it, and then you answer you ask me the second one, and we'll just go back and forth.
Go back and forth.
Are you just
All
going to
right.
open them up one at a time? Is
Yeah.
that what you're doing? Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so the first question is, what are some books you remember that Dad and I read to you at bedtime?
Bedtime.
So as Ricky's thinking about that, for quite a few years, Mom and Dad would take turns reading to us before bed, either every night or every other night. I forget, maybe it changed, but we got a lot of books read to us that way. So Ricky, do you remember any that were read to us?
Man, I'm kind of drawing a blank on specific ones. I want to say Treasure in the Snow or Treasures in the Snow.
Okay.
Did Mom read that one to us?
Could be. I wouldn't remember that one specifically, but it's been a long time since I've heard that book. The one that came to my mind right away was, I believe the title was Sissy Kid Brother. Do you remember that book at all?
The name sounds so familiar.
Okay. I think it was one that Dad would have had as a child or had read to him as a child or something like that. And I remember he was all excited to read it to us, and we really enjoyed it. It was about a young teenager that went along with a harvest crew, his family, like with older brothers and dad, out west, and he was the cook for it. And it was kind of a summer that he learned a lot of things, and that grew him up, and I remember it being a really enjoyable story for us at that time. No idea if the book's still in print or anything like that.
Do you remember another one? I think it was about baseball, and like there was a town and with tracks, and there were like two sides of the tracks. Do you remember?
That rings a bell. I remember Dad reading a few old sports books to us, so I'm guessing it would have been one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Did he read some James Herriot stories to us too?
Quite possibly, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are a few that come to mind.
Yeah.
Next question is, what's an outstanding memory from family camping times at Lakewood?
Oh, yes. So for a few years, or a number of years, our family would go to Christian campground out close to Sarnia and on Lake Huron. And there was a Christian campground, and there was a church service there every Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't really a family memory, but it's a memory that I have from our family being there. I remember they had a guest speaker in to preach the Sunday morning sermon one time when we were there. And from what I recall, most of the sermon was him telling a story about his skydiving experience.
Okay.
And that memory sticks with me. He would have like sound effects for the plane. I remember that it took until the third time till he was brave enough to jump out. And so the plane had to circle around like 2 times to give him another chance, and he had a sound effect for the plane circling around that I still remember. So
I see. I don't remember that. I must have been in Sunday school or not listening.
You're probably drawing.
One of my memories, not necessarily a family memory either, but do you remember the wagon rides?
Yes.
So this guy would drive a tractor that was pulling a wagon. I think it was like every evening. He'd just drive around the campground, and anyone who could ride it, anyone that wanted to could. And I had made friends with someone close by, a kid my age. I don't remember his name, but on this wagon ride, I specifically remember talking to him, and I asked him how old he was, because you got his is he older, younger than you? And he said kind of quietly to me, he said, "None of your beeswax." And then his mom, who was also on the ride, heard something and said, "What did you say?" And he said it again, like even quieter. He's like, "None of your beeswax." And his mom got him in trouble.
Oh no. Did you ever learn his age then?
I think his mom made him tell me, but I don't remember the age or his name, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You remember the line.
Yeah.
All right, question number 3. How much can you recall on the recipes on the pink card still taped to the pantry door in our kitchen? And so it's apparently it's still there, so we can go check up on it.
And verify after.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was we had a breakfast schedule.
Yes,
and we had to take turns making breakfast in the morning. We either had to make breakfast for everyone or pack lunches. Yep. Or sometimes we were off as well, but we had a specific...
As the sisters started getting old enough to do the different tasks, we would get an off day.
Yeah, that's right. And so these recipe cards had, from my memory, it told you how to make oatmeal and cream of wheat.
Yeah. Hot porridge or... Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, instead of memorizing the recipes, I would open the cupboard door and check every single time I made them.
So you don't know what they are anymore?
No, I
remember
exact measurements. I don't think I'd remember.
I remember that we always made cream of wheat in the microwave, and we made oatmeal on the stove.
Right. Yeah.
But and you boil the water and then put the oatmeal in. I don't remember how much. I'm gonna guess a 3/4 cup of oatmeal.
I think with the oatmeal, there's something about stir till bubbling stops. But that was always a problem because bubbling wouldn't stop.
That's right. Yeah.
Unless you turned the heat down, but turning the heat down wasn't until after the bubbling stopped. But pretty soon I figured out that you can't actually wait until the bubbling stops. But yeah, we'll have to check afterwards
definitely
to see. What sort of memories does the phrase "the golf cart" conjure up for you?
The golf cart conjures up a lot of memories. We had a dad would use a gas-powered golf cart to get around on the farm, check around the orchard and things like that. And at a certain age, we were allowed to drive it in off hours, at least sometimes. And sometimes we'd take friends on it, or we'd always try to find chores that we could that would justify using the golf cart. And sometimes bad things would happen. And one bad thing that I caused was I was driving along one time, and there was, driving close to a junk pile, there was a long strand of junk wire that was beside the pile. And I thought it'd be fun to drive over it and hear it cackle underneath the golf cart. And and then just keep going. But unfortunately, as I drove over it, it wound itself around the axle. I think it was the rear axle of the golf cart many times. Somehow it just hit it right and just coiled itself around that, and had to get a wire cutters and cut it off. I wasn't able to unwind it. It was pretty stiff wire, I guess, so I had to cut the entire thing off, and thankfully it wasn't worse than that.
I remember that happening, but I forgot the detail about it was intentional that you drove over the wire.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told anyone that. But yeah, no, I remember making a decision. Oh, I'm going to go over it. And being a poor decision. Do you have any memories?
I do, unfortunately. Two that I'll share. One, I was driving through the orchard or through a row beside, or like a space beside the orchard, and I was with our sisters, and one of them had a snack like jelly beans or something, and dropped them onto the floor of the golf cart. Okay. And so I kindly started helping pick them up as I was driving.
That was nice, I guess.
Yeah, and forgot to watch where I was going and ran right into a tree.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and put a dent in the front corner of the golf cart, and so that dent was there until the day that the golf cart died. So that always was a memory that lived on. But I remember Dad saying to me afterwards that he's like, now is as good a time as any to learn that whenever you are driving something, you have to watch where you're going at all times. And so I always kind of think of that as a lesson I learned the easy way.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and the other one is, like you said, we were always looking for an excuse to drive the golf cart, even if it was for a little bit. And one day we were getting our garden shed delivered. So it came on a trailer, and they were unloading it. And I noticed it was getting a little boring. It was kind of taking some time to unload this thing off the trailer. And I noticed that the golf cart was sitting in the sun. And this was something we'd do. We'd ask if we could park it in the shade, so it wasn't so hot the next time somebody actually needed to use it for real. So I'm guessing Dad was pretty distracted. So he said, "Yeah, that's fine." So I hop on and get ready to put this thing in the shade, and Kayleen, my sister, hops on as well for the ride,
right?
to ride to the shade.
To ride it into the shade.
And so I put it in reverse to back up, and Kayleen was sitting beside me. This is my memory of it, so hopefully hopefully I'm getting it right. But just kind of touched the pedal lightly with her foot, just enough to make it not go at all, but just the sound like a motor kind of starting. And I said, "Don't press the pedal." And then she floored it. And we were moving full speed backwards before I could like think what to do, like to hit the brakes or to, kick her leg away or whatever. And before I knew it, we sandwiched Dad in between the golf cart and the trailer. So he didn't have time to move out of the way.
I think it was right up against the tire of the
trailer. It was, because the nozzle or whatever ended up puncturing his leg, which caused it to bleed a lot. I think that was actually, there's a lot of bruising too.
Yeah. I don't know if he would have been cut though if it wouldn't have been for the stem of the valve hitting, puncturing his leg. I don't know if it would have bled, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So I felt terrible for that for a while after, and I think Kayleen did too. And
did she think that you said to press the pedal, or did she hit it accidentally?
In my memory of it, that's
okay.
That's what happened. But
yeah, no, we always have that memory now when we think about the day that the garden shed was delivered.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 5. What are your impressions of a big deal event that happened in the world when you were in grade school? So do you remember any big events from when you were in grade school?
The first one that comes to mind is 9/11.
Yeah.
I remember I was in grade 3, and I just remember our teacher saying something about how, some planes hit a building, and it was a big deal. I think, maybe more from the fact that she would paused everything to tell us is kind of how we understood that it was a big deal, or maybe from our memory of it now is that it was a big deal because we now know it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's the one that came to my mind right away as well. And I remember I was in grade 5. It was first or second week of school, so I always think about that because on the anniversary of it, it's always at the beginning of the school year. And I remember it from what my teacher said. I knew it was a big deal, but it didn't strike me as that big a deal until we got home and found Mom listening to the radio, just like laying on the bed or something, listening to the radio, which was very odd. Like at that time, she did not listen to the radio at all.
Yeah.
And she told us that she had been listening to it all day. And just that fact that was seeing Mom do something so different from her normal routine, I think is what clued this little 10-year-old that something big had happened. And so it was definitely big enough, and reading about it in the news for weeks afterwards, I think solidified how big an event it was for me. But I think I can say at the time I knew it was. It's not something that I've read back onto later. I think I was old enough to understand that it was something big.
Yeah. Next here, what didn't you like about getting ready for company when you were young?
What I didn't like about getting ready for company, I think it was just a lot of work. So Mom was good at putting us to work when there was work to be done. And I never liked cleaning or tidying up. Always seemed like a big, overwhelming job. And that was always something that we did when we were preparing for company. And definitely the worst part of that was what we called our rec room downstairs, kind of our family playroom. And it was always a mess and just horribly overwhelming to clean up. And so I always dreaded that.
Yeah, very, very daunting task.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it also being a lot of work if we were having a lot of guests and we had to put all the boards in the dining room table.
Right.
Get that thing stretched all the way out.
Eventually I got to the point where I enjoyed that part of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the more boards that I got to put in the table, the better. But it was a big job. All right, question number 7. Is there an oft-used expression of either parent that you see more wisdom in now than you did in your growing up years?
That's a good question. This is maybe one that would have been more beneficial to have known before. Can you think of any right off the top?
Yeah. There's one that I've used that I probably kind of laughed at.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, but now I use all the time. And that's one that Mom would say a lot, which is that books are our friends. So anytime that we were misusing a book at all, that we would hear that. And I always enjoyed reading, and so it probably didn't take too long to stick. But I remember as a teacher, I would use it to students when I didn't think they were treating a book right. And I've used it with Seth, my 1-year-old, a few times too. So I'm sure it's something that I'll continue to use.
Yeah, that one definitely has stuck with me too. And even seeing a book like fall off a table or something like hurts a little bit. And I wonder if part of that's because, well, books are our friends.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I didn't think of any more in that right off.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just go on to the last one then.
All right. And what do you think will be your go-to story when your children ask you to tell them about when you were little?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that I thought about recently, actually, where I remember as a child often hearing from mom, her saying something like, well, this is definitely a story that you're going to tell your children when you have children. And whenever I think about that, I remember hearing that statement a lot, but I have trouble coming up with those stories when I think about that statement. So I'm guessing that even some of the memories that were prompted here as just the prompt is all I need to think of something. So I'm guessing that when Seth's old enough to start asking for stories, or I start telling him stories about when I was young, I'm guessing that telling stories will bring other stories to mind. And so yeah, I don't know right off what a go-to one. I'm guessing I'll tell about trips that our family took. That's always something that stands out in my memory from my childhood, is some really good family trips, especially road trips to the West Coast and the East Coast. And yeah, I want to be willing to tell stories about hard times too. So people dying was a regular, or something that happened to me in my childhood a few times, with losing both my aunt and uncle at the same time when I was 8, losing my grandma when I was 4. So it's I want to be willing to tell those stories as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they'll be go-to stories, but want to be willing to tell them.
Yeah, I think the one that I already talked about, the golf cart one, will definitely be a story that I'll always remember. Yeah, and you mentioned trips, and I thought of that too. And I remember the East Coast one. Do you remember how old we were for that one?
I'm thinking maybe 11 and 13 or somewhere around there.
Yeah, sounds about right. But one thing that really stood out to me was I think it was called like the Village of Avonlea or whatever. Yeah. But there was so it was the story of Anne of Green Gables, but they had actors who walked around the town and they did different skits and stuff. But you could talk to them, like you could talk to Anne or Diana or
between skits they were kind of wandering around the town and just like like we were in the town at the time.
Yeah, I remember Mr. Phillips. Dad played crokinole against Mr. Phillips. Yeah. And when Dad won, Mr. Phillips said, "This gentleman has beaten me." So, yeah, that whole experience really, really stood out to me. So, yeah, hopefully, if have kids one day and they like the story of Anne of Green Gables, that would be a really fun story to recount.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you, Mom, for coming up with those questions and taking us down memory lane a little bit. That was fun. And thank you, Ricky, for doing this, coming on the show again and talking a little bit about the podcast, sharing a little bit more from your experience with graphic design and just talking. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Really enjoyed that.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Ricky, for coming back to the podcast and thinking about these questions, talking about the podcast with me, and conversing and reminiscing about the past. That was a lot of fun. Thank you to all of you that listen to this podcast regularly. And for those of you that haven't missed an episode yet up to this point, I really appreciate that. And thank you for listening. And for those of you that just tuned into a few episodes, I really appreciate that as well. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If this is your first episode, welcome, and hopefully you'll stick around for a few more. If you'd like to connect with the show and answer any of the questions that we talked about or give me your thoughts on the podcast up to this point, love to hear them. Send me an email at contact@everydayexpertise.ca. If you'd like to find out more about the show, check out our website, everydayexpertise.ca. That's all for now. Join me again next week to learn from the expertise of everyday people.